Hi, this is Kevin Burke. Welcome to Oceans of Mercy. Today, friends, we're going to explore how a Catholic priest receives a special calling to serve in ministry to women and men who have been emotionally and spiritually wounded by abortion, as well as the reconciliation of healing of friends and family, healthcare, mental health professionals who have had some direct role in the child's death or were unable to prevent that child's death. Father Ben Cameron is a native of Kokomo, Indiana. He graduated from Christendom College in 1991 with majors in political science and history. He joined the Fathers of Mercy in 1992 and was ordained in May 1997. Father Ben made a Rachels Vineyard retreat in October 2004 and has been the team priest and site leader for the Western Kentucky Rachels Vineyard site since 2005. He served as a parish mission preacher and retreat master for 20 years and is now the pastor of a parish in Glasgow, Kentucky, St. Helen, and Our Lady of the Caves, Horse Cave. Father Ben, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm glad to be with you.
I want to start with your calling to priesthood. If you could just share with us a little bit how God moved in your life that led you to embrace the vocation of priesthood.
Well, my story started actually when I was 12. I was in a Baptist school, and I very confused about what to be. I was Catholic, but in a Baptist school, and ended up getting confirmed that year and took a very strange confirmation name. I took the name of Melchizedek. So it was kind of like God gave me my first hint, but I had no clue. Baptist friends kept bringing up that I might be a priest someday, thinking they were crazy. Went to Christendom College. People kept bringing it up to me. Didn't want any part of it. Prepared for a career in politics. Took a year out after college to prepare for my political career and started actively discerning the call. Actually clearly heard the call. I was in Dawson City, Yukon, up near the Arctic Circle, and a missionary priest up there asked me when I was going in the seminary, and I had no answer. And I started really praying about it, and started looking at religious orders of priests, and found the Fathers of Mercy, and decided to give it a shot. And they've been stuck with me for the last 30 years.
You mean blessed? It's, I was thinking that where God really is everywhere. You're a very pivotal part of your calling happens by the Arctic Circle. That's
exactly.
That's pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So you're a Catholic priest, and how did you? I don't know if this is the right way to think of it, but I was thinking it's kind of like a call within a call. You're involved with Rachel's Vineyard. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, Father, but how did you come to learn about Rachel's Vineyard? And let's start with that.
So our main work as Fathers of Mercy is preaching parish missions and retreats. Parish missions like a retreat for a whole parish, and then retreats obviously are more for small groups. And I was doing that, and I kept having people come to me who were dealing with post-abortion grief. And I knew of Rachel's Vineyard, and I was referring people to Rachel's Vineyard. And finally, I thought, I need to learn more about this. So I did a very strange thing. I called the hotline and ended up talking to somebody and asked if I could go and observe a Rachel's Vineyard retreat. And the person said, no, you can't observe one, but you can come and make one.
That's right.
So I made arrangements, got permission from my superior, and flew to Philadelphia and made the retreat in Philadelphia. I didn't meet Teresa at that time. I did it under one of her first co-workers in the vineyard. And
Jerry Simboli, right?
What's that?
It was Jerry Simboli, probably, right?
Jerry Simboli, that's right, right. And it was powerful. It was life-changing. I saw such amazing healing. I experienced some healing myself from the things I brought into the retreat. And I went back to my superior and said, I think we need to do this in our area. At the time, the nearest Rachel's Vineyard to Western Kentucky was about 4 hours away. And I thought, we need to bring this to our area. So he prayed over it, I prayed over it, and we decided to start a team. And so I spoke at a leadership conference in '05 before I worked my first retreat. We had our first retreat in January of '06. And then it's kind of a strange thing because I'm both the priest, and we have a couple other priests who help, but I'm also the site leader. So I'm the one who organizes the retreats and kind of coordinates the team and everything. So I've been doing that for 16 years, I guess. And it's been an amazing journey. My team actually has, we would travel to Nashville to do retreats. We traveled to Memphis and help them get started. We've traveled to Alabama to help give retreats
Wow.
down there.
You've been you guys have been a missionary site, you
Yeah,
said.
we're pretty much a missionary team. I even now I have team members who live 6 hours away from each other, and they converge to come together as a team to do these retreats. So for me, it's been a very powerful thing as a priest to find Rachel's Vineyard, to help with the retreats, facilitate them, and then as far as a call within a call, it definitely has. It's impacted my preaching. It's impacted the way I view people who've had abortions. When I was young, I would go and pray outside an abortion clinic, and there would be rallies and sit-ins. I never was in a sit-in. I was always one of the people praying outside. And I kind of thought people must be cold-hearted who'd have an abortion or something.
Mm-hmm.
And working in Rachel's Vineyard has completely changed that. And if you'd told the 18, 19-year-old me that today some of my closest women friends would be post-abortive women, I would have thought you were from outer space. And yet that is exactly the case. I've formed incredible friendships. I've seen how transformed people can be through God's grace and mercy in the retreat process.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's a privilege every time I get to work a retreat. It's
Father, please excuse me. What was it about their stories or about your experience of the retreat that made that transition, which I've heard from others as well, and very understandable, made that transition in how you look at those who have had abortions?
When I started realizing how many people are pressured into having an abortion, there's the social pressure. Sometimes it's parental pressure, pressure from siblings, pressure from spouse, pressure from the doctors. You're not healthy. This baby's going to be crippled. There's all kinds of pressures that people are put under. And sometimes it's just young and they're afraid that they won't be able to finish their education. And so pressure and fear, coercion and fear play a huge role for many of the women who've had abortions. And of course, I think a lot of time the dads too, they're young men. They're confused. They don't know what to do. And society has told them this is an easy way out. Of course, some of them try they try to stop their girlfriend from having an abortion, and they're not able to. So you see how many people they weren't fully entering into it. It wasn't like a cold-hearted choice. And even some that I've met who maybe some people could argue that was a cold-hearted choice. You can see how God changes lives, and
Mm-hmm.
a person can come to realize that this was a huge mistake, a terrible thing to do, and that they have deep regret.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes have been traumatized, as we know, from the experience of how abortion goes down, and they have all these symptoms of PTSD involved with abortion, and so it just my priestly heart, and I've always been kind of a compassionate guy even before I became a priest, but my priestly heart was just open up to, to try to help and
Yeah.
to just accept and love.
Yeah.
And so it's really changed. It's changed my view of that situation.
Yeah.
I'm hardcore pro-life. I preach hardcore pro-life. I'm not, no ifs, ands, or buts. I'm so frustrated by the way that they try to, politicians and the media and stuff try to involve us all in abortion in different ways, and
Mhm.
it's something that I fight hard against, and
I
I
think
speak against.
I think you make a number of really important points there. One is that we can be very strongly and unapologetically pro-life, and we can absolutely be just as much sharing the mercy and compassion and forgiveness and reconciliation of that tragic decision. That both can go side by side. I was also thinking of my own early exposure to Rachel's Vineyard and how it changed my own view of the issue and of the people involved in abortions in my own personal life journey as well. And I started using the term those that participate in the death of an unborn child or a preborn child, rather than saying women who had abortions, right? Um,
Mhm.
I- Obviously, women and men are the mothers and fathers, but when you hear abortion stories, so often there's other people that are very influential in the either the woman's or the couple's decision to have an abortion,
Right.
and have it. And I think that's part of the as we're talking about healing. A lot of times there's the focus on the woman, and obviously appropriately so for her need. But gosh, there's so many other people. Brothers, sisters, people who contribute money, that drive the person to the abortion center, that a school counselor, politicians. I could go on and on, but you understand what I'm
Right.
saying, right? You
So,
hear
and
this.
sometimes other people involved, not the mother or father, actually bear more moral responsibility for the abortion. Just an example, I remember one time meeting um, a father who wanted his daughter to go through Rachel's Vineyard, um, and in talking to him, I mean, his daughter was traumatized, but he actually was the one responsible for the abortion. He was the one who basically forced his daughter to have the abortion.
Mm,
She may have had minimal moral responsibility for it, although she was certainly grieving and hurt and traumatized.
sure.
But the father was in this blindness of thinking that it wasn't his problem. And like, it's mainly your problem. And until you own up to what you have done in forcing your daughter to do this, um, there's always going to be this blockage.
Yes.
And
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 it could be, and it could be an obstacle to them finding healing in some cases,
right,
right?
and as far as there's a familial wound, where there should be deep trust, of a young woman for her father. And when something like this has gone down, um, that there's a deep wound in that father-daughter relationship, and until there's an admission of what was done and why it was a terrible thing for him to do in forcing her, pressuring her to have an abortion, he is never going to heal, and she's never going to be able to really trust him.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of time, there has to be, um, for spiritual healing, there has to be admission of what is wrong. It's the same type thing with people in AA and NA and everything else.
Mhm.
You have to admit what's wrong in your life in order to have any progress or any hope of healing. And that's why, as Catholics, we have the sacrament of confession. You have to admit it. You have to vocalize what is wrong. But that needs to be done in relationships too, and people need to be able to own up and to apologize for the damage that they've done and ask forgiveness. And that asking and receiving of forgiveness, it can be a very powerful thing within a family relationship.
Was
Uh,
that able to occur in that situation, Father?
Unfortunately not.
No.
Unfortunately not. the father did not connect, did not make the retreat.
Did the
Actually
daughter?
pulled his daughter out of the retreat before it was quite over. It was
Oh,
a very
that's-
sad thing for me to watch. I've got a couple on my team that they had, and they're very public about this, they had their abortion together when they were in college.
Mhm.
And they said that going through the retreat and hearing each other's perspective on it and talking about it and actually doing the retreat together was the single best thing that they've ever done for their marriage. So there's amazing healing that can happen when people are in fact willing to say, look, this is what I did and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
um, and forgiveness is a powerful thing. So every time I go to a retreat, I do work a retreat, there's powerful healing that I see. And of course, sometimes there's people who are not as open as they should be, but hopefully we pray that even they will receive as much as they can at that moment, and then God can continue to do more down the road. But I'm always amazed at how people who were stuck for 20 or 30 years can, in the course of a weekend retreat, have a life-changing experience that puts them on another path.
Well,
Um,
yeah,
yeah,
Father, that you probably heard Teresa speak about this, but to show the power of the Holy Spirit working through this ministry and using Teresa's gifts, um, she was really ahead of the game in terms of, if you look at trauma theory and trauma
mm,
treatment, that the way that the retreat is designed and the way that you experience the meditations and the calming music and the actions that you take, as opposed to just sitting and talking about your
right.
pain, you're actually moving through that in a very supportive environment and et cetera. I think that's a really beautiful part of the program. It does allow a lot of work to potentially to happen,
Right.
both emotionally and spiritually. Would you agree with that, Father, from your experience?
Oh, for sure. And what I found to be interesting, and I've talked to Teresa about this and more with her sister Katie about this, but um, what I found to be interesting is that Teresa stumbled upon, in her own way, through her love of theater, upon truths that other great minds have found in regard to psychology. And, so for example, this is completely in tune with Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas's understanding of how all knowledge comes through the senses. So it's
Yes.
not just sitting there hearing, but experiencing, seeing, touching, tasting, smelling, everything, all the senses involved. It also works very much with like how Maria Montessori's method of education goes. It's activating the senses, using all the senses. And then also like Dr. Conrad Bars and Dr. Anna Trua, who were real pioneers in the treatments of neurosis, were doing a lot of similar things as far as very hands-on, experiential, to break things down for people. And it's just interesting that some of these other people who Teresa never read, never had, it was not in her studies, and yet she came to the same truths that they came to. They all came from different angles, but they
Yes.
came to the same truths. And I think that's just an amazing thing. How things that I knew about from other places in my other studies, and what Rachel's Vineyard does is completely in accord with that. In fact, I have a whole series of articles on our local Rachel's Vineyard website about that very thing, about how these, it's called Why Rachel's Vineyard Works. And I've thought about turning it into a small pamphlet or something like that at some point.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. I'm going to check that out when we're done. That's great. And of course, they can go to the Rachel's Vineyard website, and if they go to the St. Louis retreats information,
Well,
they'll find
we're
the
Western
website there.
Kentucky. Ours is
Huh.
Western Kentucky. It's listed in Kentucky as Bowling Green, Owensboro.
Okay,
Um, that's where our site. Yeah.
beautiful. Um, well, I was also wanted to ask you about the confraternity of Our Lady of Mercy, which seems to be a beautiful fruit of your own ministry. I'd love for you to share with our viewers how you came to develop that, how that's a little bit about the confraternity, and what and people who are interested, how can they connect with you about that?
Sure. Well, there's in Rachel's Vineyard, there's a lot of talk about doing aftercare, and in urban areas, metropolitan areas, it's fairly easy for people to get together for aftercare meetings and group sessions and things to reconnect. And of course, Rachel's Vineyard provides online things like I forget the names of. Anyway,
Yeah,
there's
oak trees is the one.
What's that?
Oak trees. It's
Oak
called.
trees, right? Oak trees, and there's other type of things like that. But our people are coming from. I've had people come from central Indiana to Alabama, Mississippi, Missouri. Yeah, I've had people come in from a very broad area to make the retreats in our place, and we really just serve like a 2 or 3 state area in reality, just to territory wise. And so it's really hard for us to ever have aftercare get-togethers and have many people be able to come. So I was praying about that, and it came to me while I was on a mission in Michigan during adoration. It came like a bolt of lightning, a spiritual aftercare that would give people a spiritual kind of program of life that they could follow together, that would provide them with how to seek holiness after abortion. What I tell people often is God doesn't just want to forgive you from abortion. He does that in confession. He wants to heal the wound, and he does that in Rachel's Vineyard. He also wants us to go beyond healing. He wants us to become holy. He wants us to become saints.
That's a beautiful message. Really powerful.
And saints are what changes the world. I mean, you go down through history, it's saints that change the world. And I've told people, like, for example, almost nobody, few historians, remember the names of the kings who were reigning at the time of Francis and Clare. But we know Francis and Clare.
It's a good point. Yes.
And you can do that through a lot of eras. It's the saints who really change things. And so God's calling people to be saints. And so the Confraternity of Our Lady of Mercy, and the website is actually confraternityofourladyofmercy.org, or you can go OL Mercy for ourladymercy.org, and it like forwards you right over to the long name. But it's it's something people can join. There's a prayer life that people are invited to enter into. It's all really basic Catholic spirituality, but tweaked particular for people who have had abortions or been involved in abortions, to embrace their personal call to holiness. And then on the website, there's many articles that have been written, especially mostly by me, to help people with that. Things help us to grow. And so it's something people are invited to do. And then there's about 20 to 25 communities of nuns and monks that pray for the confraternity members, that include them in their prayer life. So they know that they're not alone. There's a whole bunch of other people who are praying for you, with you. You're sharing in this bigger spiritual family. And so that's what it's about.
Beautiful. That's so powerful. I was reflecting as you were sharing that, so many folks today are disillusioned in various ways, and you get caught up in some of the political issues in the secular world and in the church, and scandals and various things that, certainly need attention and at times. But I think sometimes we miss how important it is and how world changing it is. And certainly it changes those in our immediate environment, our friends and our family, our coworkers, but that striving to holiness, we can get so distracted and our energy could become consumed with anger and bitterness, disillusionment, that we are not investing our energies. And I have to tell myself this every day. It's why I find the daily Eucharist is so important, is we need to be really focused on the Lord's call to holiness. Does that make sense, Father Ben?
Absolutely. I think a lot of time we can get lost in the big picture, and we can
Yeah.
think, this is beyond me. This is beyond what I can do, what I can fix. And then the temptation is to throw up our hands and just surrender to what's going on. Whereas really these things, a lot of the most important battles that have ever been fought have been fought from the ground up. The solutions are not the top down. It's not that if we have the right president, we'll fix our problems. It's from the ground up. It's from the bottom up of each of us seeking to live a life of holiness, to grow in the virtues, um, faith, hope, and charity, all the moral virtues, and to what can I do and where I'm at, how can I touch people around me with the love of Jesus Christ? And that's precisely Rachel's Vineyard, I think, is changing many things in the pro-life movement. I think broader than that, because it's one person at a time. And it's not to denigrate anything else in
No,
the pro-life. It's
sure.
uh, but by nature, Rachel's Vineyard is very much centered on the individual person who is coming with wounds, who is seeking healing from Christ, who is seeking to deepen their relationship with Him. And I mean, when you have a team of 6 people who give their weekend to help 4 people, and that's pretty intense and incredible thing for those 4 people on the receiving end. That they matter that much. And I actually think that's one of the big things is it's not like, oh, we're doing this, we're putting this on for 100 people. No, we're putting this on for a small number of people, and we're giving all this time and energy and effort to
Yeah,
be there for a couple people. And it helps them to realize how precious they are, how valued they are, how loved they are.
absolutely. That's such an
It's
important message, Father, because I think that's one of the charisms of the ministry is on the different levels that you're experiencing. Probably for the first time in many ways, you're experiencing the love of Christ very intimately,
Mhm.
and you're experiencing the church, the beauty of the church, the beauty of the sacraments, the beauty of the Word of God.
Mhm.
And then, of course, the person of Jesus that you encounter. We talked about the psychological benefits, but I think where the Holy Spirit works powerfully is them really having that close relationship with the heart of Jesus. But also, as you mentioned, it's in a sense reflected in the love of those that are serving them, and I think isn't that what church is all about, right, Father Ben?
Right. And I think sometimes people have trouble believing that Jesus loves them.
Oh, absolutely,
And
yes.
then, or they have a disconnect with God the Father. And a lot of time because there was a wound with their own father.
Mhm.
And then, but when a priest and a therapist and a small number of people spend the time with them and walking the journey with them and sharing the most intimate things with them, then that helps to open them up to the fact of how much that Jesus loves them so much more, that it helps people to begin to realize how much He loves them. And of course, the meditations and everything that we do in the vineyard are all geared to that, opening a person more and more to the grace of God, to the love of God. And I'm always just moved by how after retreat, if there's 6 people on the retreat, it's 6 different moments in the retreat that were the key moments for those people. A different thing will affect one person. It's the Lazarus exercise. Another person, it's the Bartimaeus exercise. There's so many different moments that God can use to be where the wall cracks, or in some people's case, the wall comes tumbling down,
Yeah.
and they're able to just be in the light when they had been in the darkness for so long. And it's a profound experience for me to be with that, to walk with that. um, it's just a joy. One of my team members says every priest should make a Rachel's Vineyard. I agree with her. I
Yeah.
think that it could. help every priest to be more compassionate
That's a
and
beautiful message.
more loving and more understanding of the woundedness in our world if they were, in fact, to go and make a Rachel's Vineyard.
That's a great idea. A wonderful suggestion. I'm so glad that you brought that up. I hope that any clergy, any deacons or priests that are watching this today will feel free to connect with you if they'd like, Father
Sure.
Ben,
Yeah.
with your order, and to learn about your own involvement in Rachel's Vineyard, and of course to connect with our ministry and consider attending a retreat, going through the process. And like you mentioned, you enter fully into that initial retreat, but that's such a blessing on a personal and on a level of your vocation. Father Ben, I want to just thank you personally and on behalf of Rachel's Vineyard and all those you've served. I'd like to thank you for the gift of your spiritual fatherhood to this ministry. It's such an amazing, the priesthood vocation is such a blessing to us as laity. But in addition, you've been such a blessing to Rachel's Vineyard in your leadership and the confraternity. And just your compassionate, loving, fatherly heart. So on behalf of all those you've served, on behalf of Rachel's Vineyard, I'd just like to thank you for that, for your spiritual fatherhood.
I appreciate that. It's helpful for priests sometimes to get a thank you. Sometimes we get only the criticism. And so I'd like to encourage the viewers, thank your priest, thank your parish priest when he does something good and kind, because a lot of time that can really make a priest's day.
Beautiful.
So,
well, thanks. Really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today, Father.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Well, friends, I hope you were blessed. I know I was blessed by Father Ben's presentation today. If you or anyone that you love or care about, friend or family, has been personally impacted by abortion. Perhaps they've had an abortion. Perhaps they helped someone else get an abortion. Perhaps they were not able to stop an abortion, and that was very traumatic for them. Rachel's Vineyard is there for you. If you go to abortionforgiveness.com, you just put your zip code in, and it'll show you all the Rachel's Vineyard retreats in your area and other abortion healing ministries as well. Thanks so much for being with us today on Oceans of Mercy.